Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukya Satu katam avashishta udavoyad Darirapi tatyaja akirtim trayadisha Rajuvacha Nidhanam upagateshu Vrishnivojeshu Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukya Satu katam avashishta udavoyad Darirapi tatyaja akirtim trayadisha
Satu katam avashishta udavoyad Darirapi tatyaja akirtim trayadisha Rajuvacha Nidhanam upakateshu Vrishnivojeshu Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukya Satu katam avashishta udavoyad Darirapi tatyaja akritim triyadisha Rajuvacha Nidhanam upagateshu Vrishnivojeshu Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukya Satu katam avashishta udavoyad Darirapi tatyaja akritim triyadisha.
Okay. Completely not prepared for this, so I'll do my best. Rajuvacha. The king inquired. Nidhanam. Destruction. Upagateshu. Having overtaken. Vrishni. Of the Vrishni dynasty. It's interesting here, Prabhupada translates these words literally as destruction having overtaken. But if we look at the commentaries of the Acharyas, especially Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they use it in a different sense, like this upagateshu, just like upanayana. Upanayana means to come near. So upa means you come near. So then the Acharyas, they translate this as the Vrishnis have now come closer to Krishna, meaning they've achieved Krishna's abode, not that they've been destroyed, because actually the associates of the Lord can never be destroyed. Yeah? So just interesting. And of course there's many different ways that these things can be translated. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. It's just there's many ways you can translate it. Vrishni, of the Vrishni dynasty. Bhojesu, the Bhoja dynasty. Adhirata, great commander. And actually, when Bhishma Dev was assessing all the warriors at Kurukshetra, at the battle, he was rating them all, and he was saying Ekarata, Maharata, Atirata. So Adirata, Ekarata means one who can fight with one. You know, they can fight one-on-one. And a Maharata can fight many hundreds, or thousands of warriors even. And an Adirata can fight unlimited. So it's talking about these warriors, you know, that they're actually so capable in battle, they can fight unlimited. Just like we see with Bhishma, for instance. It didn't matter how many warriors that were present before him. Just like when he fought, when he was trying to get brides for his brother Vichitravirya. Not his brother, his nephew, I think, something like that. Anyhow, he was trying to get. I think it was actually his brother. I just forget the kind of the dots, you know. But anyhow, so he went and he went to this kingdom where there was three girls being offered in marriage, Amba, Ambalika, and I can't remember the names. Huh? Yeah, Amba, Ambalika. What was the third one? Ambika. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Ambika's up in your Govardhan. And so he because they're all at this Swayamvara ceremony and doing all their different kind of competition for to win the hands of these young maidens, and Bhishma just rides in on his chariot, scoops up the ladies, plops them on the chariot, and just rides off. Couldn't care less about all these warriors, you know. And he had no interest for himself. He wasn't doing it for himself. He wanted to find brides for his brother. Because Bhishma, as we know, had taken a vow of perpetual celibacy. He would, take a vow of brahmacharya, which for a kshatriya was considered, abominable. Because before his name was Devabrata, but when he pronounced this vow, he heard that there was this voice voices from the heavenly planets saying, from the skies saying, from this point, they said, Bhishma. From this day forth, you will be known as Bhishma. And Bhishma means like terrible, like you take a terrible vow. And so anyhow, so he just scooped up these young women, he plopped them on his chariot, and he just rode off. Wasn't even, just like, it describes how a lion will just go and take the prey from a jackal. And like, what's the jackal going to do? The lion will just one bite, take its head off, and it's finished. So Bhishma was like that. And then all these warriors, they became completely infuriated that Bhishma had so audaciously done this. So they all were running around, banging in each other, because they were all dressed in their ceremonial robes, their armor, their ceremonial armor. It wasn't really meant for battle. And they didn't have their weapons with them, because they were there showing off how handsome and attractive they were to these young ladies, trying to attract them. And Bhishma just, he's riding off. And then they all gathered their arms and they followed after Bhishma. And Bhishma Dev just while riding his chariot, and he's just like, firing arrows at the same time and just completely devastated them. But then at one point, I think it might have been, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Jarasandha. No, Jarasandha was there was one of these young ladies that had given her heart to Jarasandha. Shalya, thank you for the correction. I knew I was wrong. Anyhow, so Amba had given her heart to Shalya, and he was a mighty warrior. And then, because everyone else, they'd been defeated, and they were just like, oh, I'm going home. And then so Shalya, he started to call out insults to Bhishma. As lowest of the Kshatriyas and this thing and that thing, he's saying all these types of things. And Bhishma Dev's just ignoring him and just riding off, And then I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said something that was like really, annoyed Bhishma. So he stopped, he turned around his chariot, and then all these other warriors, they saw this, that Bhishma Dev was turning around his chariot, and they all sort of turned around to come and watch, because they realized this was going to be like the battle of the century kind of thing. And so, Bhishma Dev just, he was just firing astra after astra after astra. So the point is that it didn't matter what opponent he was faced with. Even when he fought Parshuram himself, he was able to defeat them because he was such a mighty warrior. Arjuna was in the same category. We see at the Battle of Kurukshetra, there were days there where Arjuna defeated tens of thousands of warriors single-handedly, with no support at all, just on his own. He just killed them. There was one, I think the Bahalikas, this race, he just wiped them out completely. So this is the nature of these warriors. They were so great that they could take on unlimited, and it's like it's face-to-face combat. It's not like some guy sitting in a bunker somewhere in West Virginia presses a button and destroys someone in Iran or Iraq or something like that. It's not like that. Presses a button and a missile goes up and blows up a whole city. That this is cowardly approach. Now, these men were warriors. They were very, very brave and chivalrous, and they would face them face to face and knew their capacity. They knew the capacity of the enemy, and they were very, very expert. So this word adirata is very, very interesting. Okay, we'll continue. Utapa, commander-in-chief. Utapeshu, amongst them. Mukhya, prominent. Sa, he. Tu, only. Katam, how. Avastita, remained. Uddhava. And now the question is being asked, it's like, how is it that Uddhava remained? Why did he remain on this world? And this will be answered in the subsequent verses. A very, very interesting story. And it also sort of sets the scene, if you like, for ISKCON. Why did Uddhava remain? He remained to preach the glories of Krishna. So he was like, the original preacher, if you like, because he remained on this planet simply to tell the glories of Krishna. And we see then later Sukadeva Goswami came. So when Sukadeva Goswami came onto the scene, then there was no need for Uddhava to remain. So that's when he retired. Yat, whereas. Hari, the personality of Godhead. Api, also. Tat yajje, finished. Akirtim, complete pastimes. Tri Adisha, the Lord of the three worlds. Translation. The king inquired, at the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds, Sri Krishna, and the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great, and the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders, why did Uddhava alone remain? Responsively, please. The king inquired. At the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds.
At the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds.
Sri Krishna. And the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties. Who were the best of the great commanders. Why did Uddhava alone remain? And it's not like Parikshit didn't know why, because understand the situation here is Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami were both great Mahabhagavat devotees of the Lord. They're both deeply realized. Parikshit, from even before his very birth, was a devotee of Krishna. He saw Krishna in the womb. And Krishna's not going to appear in the womb. I mean, did any of us see Krishna in the womb? I mean, I don't recall that happening. And I think if it happened to us, we'd remember it. So we can see that the greatness of Parikshit is that Krishna actually appeared in the womb to protect him from this Brahmastra. So very, very greatly advanced. And Sukadeva Goswami, as we know, the son of Vyasadeva, very, very greatly advanced and self-realized personality. So great that we see that, if you look, I think it's still there. Like if you look in the fly cover of the Bhagavatam, you can see here this beautiful painting with Sukadeva and Parikshit. But then have a look in the audience. There's Narad Muni. And who's that person who's sitting next to Narad Muni? The blue-coloured person. That's Vyasadeva. All these, and it describes how all the greatest rishis in the universe had come there to hear the Bhagavatam being spoken. Why? Because they knew that Sukadeva Goswami was speaking it. So that gives you some idea of the personality who's speaking the Bhagavatam. The fact that Vyasa and Narad Muni themselves, Narad Muni is like the original progenitor in our, or not progenitor, sorry, the original spiritual master in our line. He heard it from Brahma, he spoke it to Vyasa, Vyasa spoke it to Shukadeva Goswami. So he's a great Vaishnava, and yet he was sitting there hearing Sukadeva Goswami speak, because he knew that what Sukadeva Goswami was going to speak was the supreme absolute truth. So, but also not just that Sukadeva Goswami was going to speak, because there's no good the guru speaking if the disciple is not capable of understanding. Otherwise, it's just like the expression of water off a duck's back. It just won't have any effect. But because Parikshit Maharaj himself was also such a greatly advanced devotee, and he was ripe to inherit, to receive that knowledge from Sukadeva Goswami, therefore it would have its ultimate effect, i.e. he would give up his material attachments. He'd already given up his material attachments, but he would benefit from this knowledge and go back to Godhead. He would attain self-realization. And also, not only that, because as I said, Parikshit Maharaj already was a self-realized person, but for the benefit of all the worlds, the Bhagavatam was going to be spoken. And we see that even to this day and age, we are also benefiting from the presence of the Bhagavatam. So a very, very important situation or dialogue, like an event, and the dialogue which is going on here is the supreme conversation, if you like. And so the king is asking Shukadeva Goswami, well, Krishna went back to the spiritual world. All the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasty, they've gone back to the spiritual world. Well, why did he alone remain? And this is the question that's asked. And then Sukadeva Goswami, he responds. He says, actually, this whole thing was just a ruse. It was just a plea. The cursing of the Brahmanas, of the Bhoja dynasties, and Krishna's, leaving this world. This is all just an arrangement, if you like. Because Krishna wanted to, he'd finished his pastimes, and he wanted to, also take his beloved family members with him. It's not like the Bhoja and Vrishni dynasties. If you see the way the whole event took place, how Kritavarma and who else was it? I can't remember. But the two of them started to argue, because Kritavarma during the Battle of Kurukshetra had taken the side of the Kauravas. That was by the arrangement of Krishna. It's completely by the arrangement of Krishna. He had no interest in that. He was willing. He was going to fight on the side of Krishna, but by some arrangement of the Lord, he wound up on the side of the Kauravas, and so he got criticized for that at this point. When they had all gone to Prabhas Kshetra, and they were drinking this wine, rice wine, and they became intoxicated, and so then harsh words started to fly, if you like, and so he was criticized. He was called bad names, so he became angry, and he picked up these reeds, which was a whole story. And I won't go into the whole detail of it. But then they started to beat each other and kill each other. And finally, what happened was Krishna and Balaram. They also actually it was Krishna and Balaram who took the reeds, and they took the reeds, and the reeds became like iron rods. And the remaining Kauravas who hadn't beaten each other to death, then Krishna and Balaram beat them all to death. But this was, it's a pastime of the Lord. We can't look at this with mundane eyes. We can't think of this as being just some ordinary drunken party where the attendees all get drunk and they get into a big fight and kill each other. It's not like that. But Krishna arranges these things in such a way so that non-devotees will think this is mundane. They'll think, but how is it that you're saying these are the dearmost associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? How are you saying that? Look at the way they look at their behavior. Look at Krishna's behavior, licentious behavior with other people's wives in the forest. He's having illicit connection. If we in this day and age, it wouldn't really matter, to tell you the truth. You hear about this all the time of leaders having affairs with other people's wives, and no one gives it a second thought because it's just so normal. But in a cultured society, like the society that was present in the world at that time, for someone to have an affair with someone else's wife, or even like unmarried man, unmarried woman having an affair, was considered to be most degraded. And this is one of the testimonies, if you like, of the greatness of the gopis, is they were willing to give up all of this, all their position in society, for the pleasure of Krishna. And the same with Arjuna. He was willing to give up his connection to his family for the pleasure of Krishna. And this is the sign of a greatly advanced devotee, is they're willing just to let go of everything that they hold dear on the material platform in this world for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is the essence of these relationships, is they renounce everything for Krishna's pleasure. And the same here, Uddhava, he's let go of everything. He wanted to go back to the spiritual world with Krishna, but Krishna's saying, no, you stay here and you spread this message, you tell people about me. Yeah? It's a very, very interesting story. All right, I'll read the purport, and I'll probably make some comments as we go along. It's a one-page purport. It's a very interesting purport. According to Jiva Goswami, Nidanam means the transcendental abode of the Lord. Ni means the highest, and Dhanam means opulence. And because the abode is the highest manifestation of transcendental opulence, his abode can therefore be called Nidhanam. Apart from the grammatical elucidation, the real purpose of the word Nidhanam is to indicate that all the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasty were direct associates of the Lord, and after the end of his pastimes, all the associates were dispatched to their respective positions in the transcendental abode. So we see here Prabhupada's also giving the same elucidation on those words. It doesn't mean, though, because here he's just translating it literally, destruction. And upakateshu or upakate, meaning they came near to Krishna. So they went to Nidhanam, the highest opulence, the highest abode, and were near Krishna again. And not that they were destroyed. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elucidates the meaning of akirtim as pastimes. A means complete, and kirtim means transcendental pastimes. Since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there is no question of his changing or quitting his body. Because we see, that when the Lord decided to wind up his pastimes, he went to the forest and he sat down. You can see that picture. I think it's in the 12th canto, where Krishna's sitting there, cross-legged, and the hunter. I can't remember the hunter's name. No, that's a different one. Different hunter. Huh? Jara. That's right. Jara. Thank you. He sees Krishna's foot through the leaves, and he thinks it's the head of a deer. So he fires an arrow, and the arrow doesn't even pierce Krishna's foot. It's just like scratches. Like, I got a scratch on my leg yesterday, but I didn't die from it. So that the arrow just touches Krishna's foot, and then the hunter realizes, he comes closer to see the prey because he thinks he's bagged himself a nice deer to eat, and he gets closer. And he actually realizes what he's done. He realizes that this is the Supreme Person of God, because he sees Krishna there with his weapons, his four weapons, or his four, the Sankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma, manifest personally around him. Then he realizes what he's done. He bows down, he pays his obeisances. And then what happens is that Krishna leaves a material form. It's not his transcendental form, because the transcendental form, some scholars have this notion that, they comment on the Bhagavad Gita, that is when Krishna says Savadamam Parityadya, they think that, this means to the within Krishna, you should surrender to the within Krishna. But they just don't understand the transcendental nature. If something's transcendental, what's the difference between within and without? It's the same thing. So Krishna's body is not different from himself. Because that's the thing. Here we are in this world of duality, and this Atmavan Manyate Jagat, the way I perceive things, that's the way everything is. So because they have this material perception, because they have this perception of duality, and I thought it was very interesting the way that Bhagavad Prabhu was explaining this yesterday, about how, whatever it is you hear all the time, that's the way you perceive things. In psychology, they talk about, I'm not a psychologist, I don't know, but I've read a little bit, a very small amount. And there's one thing they talk about is your script. It's just like when you go to, when you're doing a play or a movie or something like that, the actor has a script that they read from. So in the same way, the psychologists, they use this terminology to look at us. We have our script, and that's what we're reading if you like, internally. That's how we view the world. And, you grew up in one place, so you see things in a particular way according to the guna and karma you acquired from that particular environment. I grew up here in Australia, so, and in a particular part of Australia, so I have a guna and karma that is relative to where I grew up. And the thing is like for a person who's materially conditioned, their script is causing them to view the whole world through this conditioning. It's just like when I was a young fellow, there was a relatively famous local musician, and he had this song called Rose-Colored Glasses. And the point is like he was talking about how when you wear these rose-colored glasses, everything looks very rosy, very nice, so you see everything in a particular way. And it reminded me of, like, I used to have this, Nrsimha gave me these driving glasses, Vornay driving glasses, and everything when you wear these glasses is like bright yellow. And it's kind of really interesting because your eyes don't get tired when you're driving a car and you've got these, where everything looks bright yellow. It's like bright sunshine. You think, wow, this is going to really make my eyes tired. But it actually didn't. It was really easy to drive with these glasses. So, in the same way, and Bhagavad Prabhu quoted that verse also yesterday, Nahi Kashichanamapi Jatu Tistat Yakama Krit, how that it's this chanam, meaning a moment. Not even for a moment can you avoid acting according to the modes of material nature that we've acquired according to our conditioning. So it's just like, here I am in this, Australian body. So because of this Australian body, I view the world in an Australian way. Of course, it's not as bad as it used to be. Because of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, I've come to the process of devotional service. And a lot of that conditioning is now gone. Some of it's still there. There's no doubt of it. Some of it's still there, But, I'm not out on the streets, Aussie, 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 oi, 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 or anything like that, But, some of it's still there. So, that's the situation for all of us. Because we have this conditioning which causes us to see things according to the duality of this world. We see a difference between, heat and cold, or we experience the difference between heat and cold, light and day. It's the world of duality. Everything it has this dual nature here in this world. But one who's a transcendentalist sees the oneness in everything, how it's all nothing but energy of Krishna. And this energy of Krishna, I was reading something interesting about this the other day, the energy of Krishna. And actually, Bhagavad Prabhu was also commenting yesterday. Someone asked him a question about, oh, that's right, how is it that Maya can have an effect on us? How it is that the Maya can bewilder us and stop us from seeing Krishna, or stop us from surrendering to Krishna? And the ultimate, at least in my understanding, the ultimate answer is because it's an energy of Krishna. Therefore, it can easily control us, because it's Krishna's energy. And she's an expansion or like the shadow, as Chayevi Yasha Bhuvanani Vibhakti Durga, as it mentions in the Brahma Samhita. She is the shadow of Krishna's Yoga Maya potency. And Yoga Maya is the one who makes all the arrangements for Krishna's pastimes. Everything that Krishna is doing in the spiritual world is arranged by Yoga Maya. So very, very powerful potency. Very powerful. And so by that arrangement, we're bewildered, we're covered over. And that causes us to see the duality in this world. This causes us to identify with this duality, when actually we're not part of this. The living entity is not part of this material world. The living entity is completely separate. But because of this covering potency of Maya, then we identify with it. So that's a really important point here. Where are we up to? So it's the point that he's making here, that there's no question of Krishna changing or quitting his body, but because of this identification, we're identifying with his body, but we're seeing, we're seeing the body as being something that's transient. And mostly people don't see the soul. But the soul is transcendental. The soul, as Krishna says, Najayate mriyate vakadachim nayam bhutva bhavatana vana bhuya ajo nicho shashvato yang parano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. It has not come into being, does not come into being, will not come into being. Eternal, unborn, ever-existing primeval, not slain when the body is slain. But the jivas in this world, they don't see that. They don't even see there's a soul there. They just see the yantra. They just see the machine. And they think that the machine has got life. Can you just imagine, the car having life? You've got a car parked outside and it's going to start itself up and just drive off. You ever seen it do that? Even with these autonomous vehicles, they still need a person to push the button to make them go, or to speak the command into the phone or whatever it is they do to make them go. So a machine on its own can't act. But the living entity is bewildered by the influence of false ego, as Krishna points out in the Gita. They don't see the reality. They don't see what's going on in this material world. They think it's all just machines interacting, which sounds like iRobot or something, A book I read when I was a child, I can't remember the author's name, but it's like, all the robots start to they develop life of their own. But even if we get to that point, we'll understand that a jiva will enter into that robot. Because it's just another machine, it's all it is. So this body is just a machine, but it happens to be a machine that is a suitable place for a jiva to exist, for a jiva to inhabit for some period of time. So even if they develop machines, if the scientists develop machines that develop life, we can understand what will happen is they'll develop a machine that's so sophisticated that there's a suitable place for a jiva to exist for some time, to live, to reside in for some time. But the point here is it's talking about how that Krishna's transcendental body is not different from himself. It's not like in our situation the body and soul is different. But what happened is he created this situation or this scenario where it seemed like his body and self were separate, to bewilder the materialists. So they would say, well, just see, he's no different from us. He had a material body. It's all just the workings of his maya, his mahamaya, just to bewilder the atheists. So they'll have a good excuse to say, well, just see, he's no different from us. How do you say he's God? And even like they struggle to accept that even if they accept that there's a supreme power, they struggle to accept that he has a body, or has personality. Because then, again, getting back to this Atmavan Manyate Jagat, they see everything according to the way they see it. I have a body, I have a self. That's suffering. God's beyond that. How can the Supreme's beyond that? So it's just they just really struggle to see things, the reality of things. To act in accordance with the rules and customs of the material world, the Lord seems to take his birth or leave his body. But the pure devotees of the Lord know well the actual facts. So you're seeing, just to act in accordance with the rules and customs of this world. It is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of the Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti. And this is a really important point. I remember years ago being criticized for quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in class. But Srila Prabhupada repeatedly encourages us to study the teachings of the acharyas, because the acharyas, especially Rupa, Sanatan, Jiva, and that, they're very clearly expounding the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he did not ever write books as such, but he spoke. And the Goswamis, especially Rupa and Sanatan, they had a lot of, especially Rupa, had a lot of personal association. And there's some really interesting pastimes that took place in Puri, when Rupa Goswami went to Puri to meet with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there's many like little stories there, but some of them are very, very nice. When Rupa Goswami first got there, he came before Mahaprabhu, he bowed, he was staying with Haridas Thakur, and then it was Mahaprabhu's habit that every day he would come to visit Haridas Thakur, because Haridas Thakur would not go to the temple of Jagannath. So he would come and visit Thakur Haridas, because Thakur Haridas was a greatly advanced devotee. And so Sanatana Goswami was staying there, and then when Mahaprabhu came, not Sanatan, sorry, Rupa Goswami was staying there. And when Mahaprabhu came there, Rupa Goswami bowed down and Thakur Haridas introduced him. Of course, Mahaprabhu knew who he was. But Mahaprabhu was very impressed with his qualities. Very, very impressed with his qualities. And then, excuse me, he had asked Rupa Goswami to write some verses, and then he took those verses and he gave them to Ramananda Roy and to analyze. I think at one point he also gave some of his writings or one of his books to Swarup Damodar Goswami. Anyhow, so you know, like Ramananda Roy, he analysed this writing, these prayers that Rupa Goswami had written, and he was just, you know, astounded with the depth of the philosophy that Rupa Goswami was capturing in these prayers, and he glorified him to Mahaprabhu. And then another time that Rupa Goswami had written some prayers, and he was actually glorifying Mahaprabhu, and he kind of felt a bit ashamed in one sense, and he stuck the parchment up in the leaves of the thatched cottage and went down to the sea to take bath. Mahaprabhu came there and he found them and he pulled them out, and he was like looking at it, and he's explaining to one of his associates there. He says, "Look at the writing of Rupa Goswami. It looks just like strings of pearls, and it's just so beautiful." And then when Rupa Goswami came back, he was glorifying. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the Goswamis, they really understood the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even though Mahaprabhu did not present any teachings in written form, he spoke to them. You know, he spoke the philosophy in also his life, and they were able to take, especially also Jiva Goswami was very, very important in this, because Jiva Goswami, he took all the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he systematized them. He put them down in a very, very systematic way. Yeah? And so we see here how Prabhupada is pointing out the importance of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, especially his Sarata Darshani commentary, and we see with Jiva Goswami with his Sandarbhas. And so, you know, we hear of the Sat Sandarbhas, the Tattva Sandarbha, the Bhagavat Sandarbha, the what else is there? Krishna Sandarbha, Bhakti Sandarbha. I don't remember all the names. But yeah, there's Paramatma Sandarbha also. And the thing is with the Sandarbhas, what they do is they take the philosophy of the Bhagavatam and they present it thematically. So the Tattva Sandarbha is establishing the epistemology, or you know, like what do you call it? Not the epistemology. What's the word? The hermeneutics of why it is the Bhagavatam, or what is our praman? What is our praman we're using? You know, where's this coming from, and why it is the Bhagavatam is the most important. And so it's establishing the truth about Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. So it's establishing the basis for everything we're talking about. And then you go on to the Bhagavat Sandarbha, talks about, you know, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then you have the Paramatma Sandarbha, talks about obviously the Paramatma. So it goes thematically. Then there's another Sandarbha which is called the Krama Sandarbha. So the Krama Sandarbha, what it is, it's all the writings that are in these different Sandarbhas put in a chronological form. You know, so it goes from the first canto through to the 12th canto. So, you know, he's given it in both ways, so we can easily access this information. And Srila Prabhupada is saying here that, you know, it is necessary, therefore, for serious students of the Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti. It's really important that when we start to study the Bhagavatam, to do it in conjunction with those two acharyas. Because, you know, Prabhupada, and I accept this as a statement of humility from Srila Prabhupada, because obviously Prabhupada's realizations of the Bhagavatam are profound, and his practical application of the Bhagavatam in his life. You know, Prabhupada was a living Bhagavatam. We could see that all the messages of the Bhagavatam Prabhupada lived in his life. So very, very profound. And we're very fortunate to have access to these teachings. But he's also saying here that, you know, also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami, we need to read their commentaries to understand the Bhagavatam even more deeply. And it's really interesting. One of the has anyone here read the Kramasandarbha or the Sarata Darshini? It's just amazing, really, really amazing. When you look at the comments they give on the first verse of the Bhagavatam, this Jamariyasya Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains this first verse in 5 different ways. 5 completely different ways. And you can really see when you read these comments. Jiva Goswami does the same thing. He also gives 5 definitions. You can really see why it is that Prabhupada wanted us to study these commentaries, because they really deeply understand this philosophy, and they will help us to enter into the philosophy more deeply. And it's not that we're not being chased to the teaching of Srila Prabhupada, because here we see Prabhupada is telling us to study these books. And so if we want to understand the heart of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we need to learn the philosophy from our acharyas. And of course, Prabhupada is our first port of call. And then Prabhupada is saying to study these other acharyas as well. So very, very important. To others who are not devotees of the Lord, the comments and explanations of such acharyas may appear to be grammatical jugglery. But for the students who are in the line of disciplic succession, the explanations of the great acharyas are quite fit. And you'll see sometimes the way that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, for instance, there'll be some story where this demon is like, just blaspheming Krishna like anything, and saying he's of this and he's of that, and I won't get into some of the comments that are there, but sometimes they say some pretty nasty things about Krishna. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this is where they get the word jugglery sort of thing from. He'll take those same words and he'll turn them, just like I said, Nidanam Upakate here is saying, destruction. They're saying, no, this actually means, Nirdanam means, the highest abode. And they're going to go there to be close to Krishna. But in some of these pastimes where Krishna is being criticized by the demons, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he takes the words and he turns them around to say, actually this is correct, because Krishna, and he talks about all these wonderful qualities of Krishna using the words that these demons are using. Because the thing is, like, their speech is controlled by the demigoddess to speak Bach. And how could they possibly say anything that wasn't true about Krishna? Because she's going to manipulate what they're saying. So they're saying things, and just like, there's also that story of Kumbhakarna, when he was asking to have, he wanted to have powerful sleep so he could sleep and be very revitalized and energized when he woke up, so he could fight very strongly. But what had wound up happening was by the arrangement of Vach, he said it in such a way that he was going to sleep for long periods of time. So we see that our speech is also controlled. But Prabhupada's making this point. We need to understand this philosophy through the words of the great acharyas. And then he goes on to say, the word upakateshu is also significant. All the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja directly reach the abode of the Lord. So this upa means come close, come near. Like I said before, upanayana. Come near. Why? So you can study the Veda under the direction of the spiritual master. Other devotees do not reach the abode of the Lord directly, but the pure associates of the Lord have no attraction for the opulence of any planets of the material world. Sometimes, due to inquisitiveness, devotees who are to be promoted to the abode of the Lord have some attraction for the opulence of the higher material planets above the earth, and thus they desire to see them while going up to the perfection. But the Vrishnis and Bhojas were directly dispatched because they had no attraction for material planets. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also suggests that according to the Amarakosh dictionary, Arkirti means signal. Lord Krishna ordered Uddhava by signal to go to Badrik Ashram after his departure, and Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead or the abode of the Lord. That was the cause of his remaining alone, even after the departure of the Lord from the face of the earth. So we see here that Prabhupada is saying that he was actually following the instructions of Krishna to go to Badrik Ashram. And on the way he met Vidura and then he spoke. We see in the previous verse how Vidura and Uddhava were speaking about the pastimes of Krishna, and it mentions there they spoke all night long, and it seemed like just a moment, because they were so absorbed in the pastimes of the Lord. And it also describes how the more they became absorbed in the pastimes of the Lord, the more Krishna was present there for them, because the Lord is non-different. It was that, what's that verse? I can't remember it right now, but it talks about how the name, form, quality and pastimes of the Lord, how they're all the same, they're all of equal potency. So by discussing the pastimes of the Lord is present, especially when those pastimes are being discussed by pure devotees. So Uddhava and Vidura were absorbed in that way in discussing the pastimes of the Lord. But as we see here that Uddhava says to Vidura, no, but actually Maitreya, because Vidura's, he says here that in the previous verse, he says to Vidura how Krishna explained to him the knowledge of self-realization and how to go back to Godhead. So Vidura is saying, well, please explain that to me. I want to know about that. But then Uddhava says, no, Maitreya was there. Because Uddhava was also, he was a little bit overwhelmed by the departure of Krishna. And it was hard for him to explain. But he did when he got absorbed in the conversation, he was managing to speak about Krishna, but then also he was saying that Maitreya Rishi, he's senior to me, he was also there, he heard, so you hear from him. So we'll see the next few chapters, the dialogue will change from Uddhava and Vidura to Maitreya and Vidura. And so there's many levels of conversation going on in the Bhagavatam. Okay, so I can finish there. And I'm sorry that I jumped around a bit, I wasn't really... Ghana Shambhu asked me yesterday if I'd give classes. Yeah, but give me a few days' notice so I can prepare. And so then Prabhu comes to me before and says, can you give classes? No one's coming for class. Yeah, so sorry about that. Yes, Prabhu, good to see you again.
Just going back to that point you were saying about how Shukadev Goswami was present with Nrsimha and Vyasadeva, and then he therefore gave the entire absolute truth to him. And then knowing that they were very advanced rishis and very advanced stages, said about like the water conducts that if someone isn't qualified to hear.
Yeah.
So how do you know when an individual is qualified to hear the Bhagavatam? Is there any particular...
Well, it's not like you have a badge that says I'm qualified to hear the Bhagavatam. No, the thing is that when one's qualified to hear, then you act upon the instruction. It's like you can hear, it's just like, we can hear things. I mean, how many times you've been to Bhagavatam class and heard the same thing again and again and again, but you don't act on it. So it means you're not ready for that. Also, it can mean that the persons who are speaking don't necessarily have the depth of realization sufficient to impress that upon your heart. Just like, we listened to lectures from Prabhupada, for instance. Right? Prabhupada's lectures on average were from 20 to maximum 30 minutes. Sometimes he gave longer ones, but not often. Yet in that 20-minute or 25-minute or 30-minute class, Prabhupada has packed so much profound teachings of our sampradaya, and they just really, I find, like, listening to Prabhupada's lectures, almost every lecture I will get something that like really affects me, that I really, wow. And that's because of Prabhupada's depth of realization, that he's able to, it's just like that verse, Tadvidi Pradipadhena Pariprishne Upadeksha Tegana Jnaninas Tatvadashina. It says because they have seen the truth, they are able to impart that truth to you. So that's the point. Like me speaking, my realization is very minuscule. So how much can I give you? I can only give you that minuscule thing I know. I could probably tell you more about the microphone than I can tell you about the Bhagavatam. And how it all works and what's in here and what's in there and all that sort of stuff. I can tell you more about that than I can tell you about the Bhagavatam. That's because my depth of realization is not very great. So therefore you'll only be able to get what I know. But when you hear from someone who's a greatly advanced devotee, then because, and the thing is like, if you take a complicated subject matter, right, Say, for instance, like, you try to, I don't know if you know anything about how microphones work, but say, for instance, you know nothing about how a microphone works, and you try to explain it to someone else. How much do you think they'll get from it? Because you try to explain it, you'll try to explain it in a very technical way and talk about electricity and formulas and all that kind of stuff. And just for a layperson, it's like, what? Yeah? But I could explain it in a very simple way, how the air moves the diaphragm, which turns it into electricity, and whatever. So in the same way, when you get someone, and people will understand that. So when you get someone who understands the philosophy deeply, like Srila Prabhupada or like the Acharyas, and this is why their commentaries are very important, because they understand the philosophy very deeply. They can impart it to you in a way that you can understand. And this is one of the glories of, for instance, Narottam Das Thakur. He wrote all these songs in popular tunes, the tunes that were popular at the time. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, same kind of idea. He wrote these songs, but what the songs were containing was really deep philosophical points, like conclusions of our Siddhanta. And he presented them in simple Bengali language, so that the people in Bengal who were not very educated or very eloquent or knowing high class Bengali, he presented to them in a simple way so they could understand the philosophy. Because the real point, or the real need, is not that you can understand a high-class Sanskrit or high-class Bengali grammar or anything like that. The real point is to understand, as Bhagavad Shraipu summed up really nicely yesterday, is that we're eternal servants of Krishna, the process of bhakti, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and ultimately that we're lovers of God, and our business is to go back to Godhead. This is really what you have to get. Whether you get it in English or Bengali or Sanskrit doesn't really matter. That's all just external. The real essence of it is to understand our relationship and to act upon that relationship. So by hearing from an advanced devotee, then you'll imbibe that more. That's why it's important to listen to Prabhupada's lectures also, regularly. Something else? Prabhu?
I was wondering if you know what's the difference between the Vishnu dynasty and the Bodha dynasty?
Well, there's the Vrishnis, the Bojas, the Andakas. They're all just descendant from different kings. Yeah, I mean, I can't give the genealogical definition of it. I do know it, but I just forgotten. But they're just descended from different kings. There was the three main ones were the Vrishnis, the Bojas, and the Andakas. And it's just a different king, but ultimately the same line. And Krishna's line, the Vrishnis was coming from the moon god, whereas we see with Ramachandra, his line was coming from the sun god. But yeah, it's just different. Same family, but just different, different prominent kings. It's just like you talk about, mentions that Arjuna is a descendant of Bharata. I mean, his father was Pandu, yeah? And you can go through the line back, but in their line there was Bharat Maharaj, but he was a prominent king who was a great devotee, so they're known by prominent kings. Yeah. Or like you look at the royal family in the UK, they come in the House of Windsor. So at some point there was some king who had that name, and that's the line they come in. Yeah. So it's just a bloodline. Yeah. But there is more detailed information about it, much more. It's just a matter of remembering it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Haribol. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.